千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for the sacred process in the Tao with one another. Getting started with Tao Te Ching 26, as usual, we begin with the chapter title. The title of this chapter is Heavy Supplies. This title comes from line 4 of this chapter. It is a specialized term in the Tao, metaphoric in nature, but it originated from ancient warfare. Heavy supplies refer to supplies for an army on the march. In ancient times, this army brought its own supplies, and that's what they were called, the heavy supplies. They included the essentials for the soldiers, food rations, tools, clothes, weapons, and armors. Extrapolating from this original historical usage, in this chapter, Lao Tzu utilizes the term to refer to the most essential supplies in the journey of life. In that metaphoric use, it is no longer physical things like food rations. The spiritual nature of the metaphor means it is about the intangibles. For instance, the resolve to cultivate the Tao, rather than things that you can hold. This is because sages have long understood that as you and I go on through the journey of life, material things will come and go. The intangibles are not like that. If we lose material things, we can acquire something similar again. Nowadays, modern times, if I lose my phone, if it becomes obsolete, I get another one. But what about the intangibles of life? What if you lose the trust that people have in you? It is possible you will never get that back. Trust is something you have to earn. And as we go through life, there are junctures where we make important life decisions. The wrong decision at a critical point may be something that you will regret for the rest of your life. Therefore, the heavy supplies, the essentials, are all connected to intangible qualities of spiritual nature. That is the concept we will explore. So here is Tao Te Ching 26. Heaviness is the root of lightness. Quietness is the master of restlessness. Therefore, the sages travel an entire day without leaving the heavy supplies. Even though there are luxurious sights, they are composed and transcend beyond. How can the lords of 10,000 chariots apply themselves lightly to the world? To be light is to lose one's root. To be restless is to lose one's mastery. So that is 道德经 26. Let's do what we normally do, which is to scan the lines top to bottom, looking for repeating patterns that can inform us of the structure of the original ancient Chinese. Looking at the first two lines, I think it is easy to see that the second character repeats itself from line 1 to line 2. Let me highlight them so they're easy to see. So the two lines talking about heaviness versus lightness, quietness and restlessness, these form a section. Now, as we look down further, we don't see as obvious the same kind of repetitions. We do see that sort of like bookending this chapter, the final two lines are also 4 characters each, like the first two lines. And they have repeating characters as well. The second and third characters repeat themselves. And this is line 9 and line 10, the last two lines. Let me go ahead and highlight those so they're easier to see. So we can identify the last two lines as a section as well, like this. So now we see that the first two lines, the last two lines bracket the middle, and the middle part is descriptions about how the sages travel an entire day without leaving the heavy supplies, and then it goes on to describe what they are, how they are in interacting with the world. Now, in those descriptions, we can look at the meaning of the lines and see subdivisions. Looking at line 3 and line 4, we realize they're one thought. The sages travel an entire day without leaving the heavy supplies. So we can identify that as a subsection, lines 3 and 4. Then, looking further down, we see that 7 and 8 are just about how the lords of 10,000 chariots cannot, should not apply themselves lightly. And we see how lines 5 and 6 are both about how there are luxurious sights, but the sages are able to transcend them. So that's forming one thought as well. We can put a subsection divider there to mark that. So we now have the sectional analysis for 26. It looks like 3 sections. The middle section is the largest one, further subdivided, so the 6 lines form 3 couplets. Let us go right into line 1 of 道德经 26. In line 1, we have 2 key characters that I want to single out for your attention. The first character is the character for heavy or heaviness. And this is used in a specific way. The way that Lao Tzu means by this character in terms of the mind, it is serious intent, deep thinking, what we call gravitas. And in terms of the spirit, this is a reference to the foundation of the essential self. That foundation is something intangible, and yet Lao Tzu says that it is heavy, meaning that it's solid and steady. So its complement is the character for lightness. That is the third character there. So the meaning is light in terms of weight or lightness, the opposite of heaviness. So again, Lao Tzu is using this in a very specific way. In terms of the mind, Lao Tzu means light or lightness as in being frivolous, being trivial, unstable, lacking stability, flighty. In terms of the spirit, this refers to the manifestation of the physical self. So the physical self has weight associated with it. And yet, Lao Tzu is referring to that as lightness. So heavy, the way that Lao Tzu uses the term, is positive, and light, to be a lightweight, is negative. This is different in another context where heavy can be used to mean like a burden, something that ties you down, weighs you down, like when we say heavy heart. It is with a heavy heart that I, etc. So in that context, it will be negative. In this context, it is positive. Similar with light. In a different context, we can be speaking of traveling light, the lightness of freedom associated with spiritual liberation. That will be positive. But here, it's negative, as we talked about, lacking stability, being trivial. So Lao Tzu is describing how they connect with each other. Line 1 says, heaviness is the root of lightness. So this is just by observing nature, noting that the peak of the mountain is supported by a heavy base of the mountain. It's about the relative importance of the spiritual versus the physical. So the spiritual is the root of the physical. That's what Lao Tzu is trying to convey. So then the tangible things that have weight are actually light. Intangible qualities do not have weight, but they're described as heavy. Usually, the conventional thinking is that people tend to consider what they see and feel as more important than intangible concepts. In the Tao, it is actually the reverse. Although we all see people placing far more importance on things like financial assets than other things like personal connections, virtues, character, and integrity. Tao sages would say they have it backwards. They would point out your essence is the root of your spiritual existence, and therefore it is the basis of your physical existence. So the essence in this description is the core of your being. So your spiritual existence, your spirituality is derived from the core. Your spiritual essence then goes through your physical self, in order to experience the world in which we live, to interact with it. In this world, one thing we note is that all material things come and go, they're transient, they're impermanent. But spirituality is eternal. So, a person's true essence or fundamental nature, that is what persists. And as I have said before, it is what's persisting lifetime after lifetime. Meanwhile, all the things that you and I acquire throughout life, they become meaningless when that life comes to an end. And that life can be longer than usual, but even what we consider longevity, a lifetime of 100 years or more, even that is less than a fleeting instant in the perspective of eternity. So this is the basis of what we're talking about today, and we're going to elaborate on that. I've prepared a graphic here to talk about the metaphor and the meaning. This is how we can bring the concepts together. So on top, you see the character for light. At the bottom, with the roots, you see the character for heavy. This is using the tree as metaphor. So the root system of the tree is the Tao in you, the soul, the spirit, your essence. What is above ground level, the branches and leaves, you go through the branches and leaves to experience the world above ground. You feel the breeze, the sun, the moon, day and night, the rain. And if a leaf were to fall in autumn, if a branch withers, well, as long as the root system is intact, you can grow more. So this is speaking to how the loss of material things are not necessarily permanent. You can always regain what you have lost. The other thing to note is that both above ground and below ground, they're needed. They complement each other. What Lao Tzu is saying is that there is no question the root is the foundation and therefore has greater importance. So, above ground activities, constant change. As I mentioned, the weather, the transition of day and night, the meaning of that metaphor is that the light or lightness, people with that perspective, the focus is external, on the material world, not on the spiritual. Whereas the root system, the foundation, provides not activities and constant change, but stability and depth. The meaning of that metaphor is that the focus is on the spiritual foundation within. This is the internal. This is turning the gaze within. And above ground, what we notice is that the leaves and branches sway in the wind. This is metaphorical to mean that those who have the perspective of lightness, those who are trivial, not serious, those who lack stability, they change their minds. This is like changing your mind with the shifting wind, just like the leaves and the branches swaying in the breeze. In contrast to that, the root system digs deep into the earth. It's unmoved. It's dependable, reliable. There's no wavering. It's like the determination to reach one's destination or one's goal. The path that you take to it can change to remain flexible, but your objective remains steadfast. Then we have leaves and branches rustle in the breeze. You can hear them when the breeze is coming through. So this is metaphorical for people talking too much, oversharing. The talkative chatterbox is characteristic of lightness. Conversely, with the heavy, it's quietly drawing strength from the soil. Metaphorically meaning, just like Lao Tzu has written, that we draw spiritual sustenance from the nourishing mother, and that is the Tao itself. So with all of this together, now you can see the reason why Lao Tzu says heaviness is the root of lightness. And this principle, heaviness being the root of lightness, it is reflected in many aspects of life. So, as an example, a promise made lightly is a frivolous promise. It is not taken seriously. On the other hand, a promise made solemnly, a solemn promise with serious intent, that is taken seriously. It is expressing commitment. It is trusted. And back to the light side, someone who exhibits lightness, not taken seriously, consider what happens in a crisis. People look to the ones, will not go to the person who lacks focus. They will not go to the one who's affected by the situation and is unable to figure out what to do next. No sense of direction, no idea what to do, but is only frantic and nervous. In that crisis situation, people look to the heavy, the heaviness, the ones who are decisive, the ones who know what to do and therefore remain calm. So generally speaking, a capricious and fickle person will not be respected, will not receive respect. It is the opposite. The person who is thoughtful and considerate, that is the one to inspire confidence in other people and therefore earn their respect. So you can see lightness is frivolity, indecisive, easily rattled, jumpy, constantly changing minds, constantly unsure, which is what undermines confidence. Sometimes a manifestation of lightness is being flippant, being inappropriate. That also undermines trust. On the other hand, the gravitas, the heaviness of the person who is respected, well, that shows commitment, a solid grasp of whatever situation may be developing, somebody who has a thoughtful plan, someone who is steady, and someone who can help other people calm down. We describe such a person as a rock. And people will be complimentary and say that, oh, I'm so appreciative of this person being in my life He or she is my rock. So like an anchor, keeps me grounded. People intuitively wish for someone who can provide stability like that. Someone who's trustworthy and dependable. So when you are firmly rooted, I want to apply this to you and me. When you become firmly rooted in the Tao, this is why people see you as a personal substance and worth. When you speak, they listen. When you act, they pay attention. Those who have this kind of quiet power, they don't necessarily have to say or do anything. Other people can still feel the effect of their presence. It is as if they exert the gravity from the gravitas. So throughout history, sages have observed and remarked on this, the difference between lightness and heaviness. One of the sages to talk about this was Confucius. So as a student of the Tao, Confucius understood this concept of heaviness taught by the ancients. He observed society, and he noted the people who were flitting around like butterflies in the wind, never staying too long anywhere. Such people, he knew, were given to whims. They were unpredictable. They were seen by others as inconsequential and could be easily dismissed from one's mind. At the same time, Confucius also noticed there were people who seemed to carry more weight in everything they said and did. They did not need to demand attention, but all eyes turned to them in any setting. They seemed effortless in their interactions, but people knew what they did mattered. So overall, you get the feeling of depth and power in such individuals. So in remarking on this, Confucius said, 君子不重则不威. Translated as, the honorable person without gravitas cannot command respect. So let me break down this saying from Confucius to show you the different parts. First, 君子. This is translated as the honorable person, a person of honor, someone who cultivates virtues and aspires to live life with ethics and propriety. Then, next two characters, 不重. This is to be without the quality of heaviness. This is to lack the steadiness or focus associated with gravitas. So the character in the middle, the fourth character, that is the same character that we have seen, heavy or heaviness. Same character used by Lao Tzu. The person lacking this quality of heaviness is seen as superficial, inexperienced, immature. It is the kind of person who may speak without thinking or act without thinking. And this can cause problems. So this is all reflective of an inner lightness of the character. Somebody who is quote unquote a lightweight. Somebody whose actions and words are not derived from a grounded, steady core. Then the last two characters, are also important. This is translated as cannot command respect. It means, in the original, you cannot inspire a sense of awe, which would lead to someone respecting the person who is inspirational. So the person who is light, unsteady, unfocused, etc., people don't gravitate to that person. They don't see that person in any kind of a leadership role. And so the very last character there, wei, that means literally awe. So Confucius notes that without heaviness, the character in the middle, you cannot inspire awe or respect in anybody. So to become a person like this, someone who is respected, someone who is valued, then there are 5 ways. Number 1, instead of being rootless, establish your roots deep in the Tao as your spiritual foundation. Number 2, instead of talking too much, listen to others and learn from them. Number 3, instead of jumping to conclusions, examine the issue with thoughtful deliberation. Number 4, instead of being swayed by appearance, look beyond the surface to gain deeper insights. Number 5, instead of being influenced by others, develop your own opinions based on in-depth understanding. So those are the 5 ways to become a person of substance, to naturally possess gravitas. Moving on to line 2. Line 2 is the contrast and interplay between quietness and restlessness. Starting with the character for quietness. This character means quiet, silence, stillness, tranquility. It is what will arise naturally from a calm and composed state of mind. It is more than just the absence of noise, of movement. It's the tranquil spirit. A deep serenity in the totality of your mind and spirit. The silence of this tranquility directly connects to the void of the Tao, which itself is absolutely silent. This is what gives rise to the clarity of mind and perception. This is what Tao cultivators wish to maximize at all times. This kind of clarity, spiritual, perceptual, and mental, this is the source of uncommon wisdom, understanding, and the ability to see what others cannot. Let's take a look at the character for restlessness. The meaning is rash, reckless, restless. So this is mental agitation, manifesting as impatience and anxious activities. The opposite of tranquility. It's a noisy and active kind of nervousness. So much nervous energy, the person cannot stop moving or fidgeting. In terms of the mind, well, the mind is in constant mental and emotional turbulence, constantly buzzing, worried, distracted. It's a state of inner turmoil. And this makes the person easily affected by others, easily influenced and moved by external events and cues. And this person can then engage in actions that are impulsive, driven by immediate urge, fear, anger, or need for instant gratification without thinking through what the actions would entail. And this is what usually leads to mistakes and regrets later on. And lastly, when one is dominated by a restless mind, they lose mastery over themselves and their circumstances. They become reactive rather than proactive. So, line 2, quietness is the master of restlessness. This character, the first character, Ching, quietness and silence, it is a key characteristic of the Tao and also your essence, because your essence is the Tao within you. It is the opposite of talking too much, being too nervous. We've all had the experience of how we can sometimes look at everything through the eyes of the Tao perspective. That is, detached observation with calmness. This leads to better understanding of the issues because you are undisturbed by the noise of distractions. And speaking of the Tao, you're able to connect with it in moments of silent focus. And this is the reason why meditation works. So this is what we wish to cultivate as cultivators of the Tao. Quiet tranquility. To summarize, it lets us perceive everything more clearly. It lets us think better, free from distractions. And finally, connect with the Tao. So line 2, this principle is reflected in many aspects of life, just like the principle associated with heaviness and lightness. So think about how the person who is compelled to fill silence with words appears shallow, whereas the person who is comfortable with silence is seen as having depth. And the one who's noisy, restless, given to constant interruptions. And frequent interruptions are a sure sign of insecurities. The person who is quiet, who has the qualities of heaviness, that person provides patient communication, and it is seen as a sign of internal strength. And back to the noisy person, excessive chattiness seen as rumor mongering or gossipy, and therefore not trusted. On the other hand, reserved communication is seen as trustworthy, fostering greater trust. So, just like heaviness and lightness, we can see the same kind of contrast in quietness versus restlessness. So we are now approaching the top of the hour. It is time for us to jump to the summary so we can bring this meeting to an end. So today we're starting out discussing the essentials of life. The first one to remind everybody of is to be rooted in the Tao. And when I say essentials of life, previously, when I went through this chapter, I called it the way to live. So it's a similar idea. So this is, when we say to be rooted in the Tao, what I mean is to establish the Tao as your foundation in the core of your being. This will let your actions and words be sourced in this foundation, the Tao. And I want to encourage everyone to explore the concepts of clarity and tranquility, how they are related, connected. And then I want to ask, are you experiencing the disturbance of ripples from time to time? This is referring to the metaphor of seeing the mind as a pond. A tranquil mind is a pond whose water is still. The surface is perfectly smooth, clear, and reflective of its surroundings. But when we are disturbed, it's like pebbles being dropped into the pond, producing ripples. So then the question is this what's happening with your mind from time to time? And the related question is, how will you let them settle and return to stillness? Are you taking a moment? Are you giving it some time to calm down? And lastly, we talked about the heavy supplies, an important concept. There's going to be a lot more we'll say about it. For now, though, just noting that the sages never leave their heavy supplies. We have to keep our heavy supplies in sight. So, for the sages and for us, what this means is what matters most to you. The essentials of life. So people usually talk about Tao cultivation as being essential. That's important. There are other things that are also essential. We will explore those ideas in depth next time. Share the Tao. The easiest way to access Tao resources is to visit my author website, dereklin.com. There, you can click on links and go to the web page where you will find everything listed, such as Taoism.net, with information about the Tao and also about this meeting. Our Facebook community where you can ask questions or discuss your thoughts on the Tao with others. Our YouTube channel where you can watch recordings of all our previous meetings. My Amazon author page where you can find books and audiobooks for your continuing exploration. You can also go directly with a web address, dereklin.com/links, as you can see. You can use these resources to share the Tao with the people you know who may be interested. When you see the benefits of Tao cultivation in your life, you can share your experience with others through your comments in Facebook or YouTube. If you find my books or audiobooks to be helpful, you can post your reviews on Amazon to help others discover the Tao. This is the path that I am on, so I can say sharing the Tao has benefited me personally in every aspect of life. I would like to invite you to come along with me to share the Tao. Let us travel together on the path in the journey of life. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.